in what is sure to finally give this channel just a little bit of credibility. I'm HMODS, and you're fucking watching HMODS.
Oh, yeah. You gotta get sweaty. You gotta get sweaty in here. It's time to get sweaty.
This video is brought to you by CyberGameway, with an emphasis on exposing streamers of all types, as well as exploring business relationships with partnered websites and service providers. CyberGameway is the place you want to be for streaming gamers who want that sub bump. To apply for membership or sponsorship, head over to cybergameway.com.
Had a little mishap in the last video. The motherboard cable was very tight on the motherboard, and I didn't want to bend it. So I did a couple of things. One, I talked to the guy who made the cables. His name is Tristan Mitchell. Here was the problem. One of them actually. One of them was this. This goes right into the power supply. It's for a Seasonic and some Asus power supplies. Your motherboard cable looks like that when it goes into the power supply. It's a 10 pin and then a 16 pin. So what Tristan does is he makes these couplers, so that way when you actually have the motherboard cable coming off of it, you really have no sort of cable crossing, which is what most cable companies will do. Because where the cable comes out of the power supply isn't necessarily will it end up on the motherboard. So Tristan makes these, and it's a damn good fucking idea. The problem with this one is, with the space being what it was, there's no way for the motherboard cable to connect to this thing unless it just comes right straight down. And I didn't want it to do that. I wanted to have some purity and some elegance to it. Yeah. Don't roll your eyes at me. Purity is... Okay, maybe purity is not the best word. Shut up. She's just like rolling her eyes at me. So, no, actually what she did was just, I
furrowed my brow.
Yeah, yes. You furrowed your brow. That's a good way of putting it. So that was half the battle. The other half of the battle was to get it to come off the motherboard with enough length so that I could still go around the back of the MOBO plate. And for that I needed to get crafty. The Cooler Master makes this. It's a nifty little thing. It's what it is. It's an ATX 24-pin connector, 90-degree coupler, and it's really nifty. It's got the logo right here, which is kind of cool, and then you plug it into the motherboard, and it goes that way. Here's the thing. Immediately when I tested this, because I'm not an idiot, when I tested this, it was too big. But it does go right. It does go right at the bottom. There was one other issue that I only just recently discovered. The power switch and the reset switch weren't working. It was something really stupid. What it was is when I disassembled it and put it all back together, the switches have to go in a certain way because the actual nub is like a rectangle. Why am I using my hands? The actual nub is like a rectangle, and it has to go into the actual button itself that way. Otherwise, the button doesn't depress enough in order to engage the switch. So that was actually a much easier fix than I thought it would be. All I had to do was pull it out, put it back in the right way. So with all that done, it is time, finally, to give this channel a little bit of credibility and show you the big reveal. So with much pleasure, I finally present Project Tango. The way it came out, there was a lot of challenges, a lot of heartache, and the challenges that it presented were monumental. With any micro ATX case, you're going to run into certain challenges where room is a concern because you want to put all the tech you want in it, but at the same time you want it to make it look good. With this, there were a lot of challenges that I did not foresee, not the least of which was the motherboard plate came very, very close to the drive bays. The 5¼ inch drive bay comes within probably 1/3 of an inch to the motherboard plate. There is a lot of touching going on. So the problems it presented as far as the motherboard cable were large. Trying to get the motherboard cable around and then behind the motherboard plate was impossible. There just wasn't the kind of room, and if I did get it going, I was either not going to have enough length to go all the way down to the power supply, or it was going to kink the cables and just ruin the whole thing. So what I did was I cut into the 5¼ inch drive bay. Since there's only the one drive up here, the other part is just a spacer, there's nothing there. So there was nothing going to affect me cutting into it. It didn't really do a whole lot, but it gave me just enough room to curl the cable around. And then I run into another problem. There wasn't enough length. Not anything I wanted to do was going to help that. The only way I was going to solve that was just to run it really, really ugly down to the power supply in front, which presented another problem. The graphics card, as you can see, was, well, it had to go in, and so the motherboard cable just wasn't going to be, with that issue, it just wasn't going to work. Even when I cut a little slice into the 3-inch drive bay for the AIO to come up a little bit, so it's not too, so it wasn't too close, it didn't help. So cutting into the 5¼ inch drive bay was the only way to go. Oh, another problem that I had. You saw in the last video, trying to get the motherboard cable to connect to the coupler that Tristan made. It worked, but when I, again, putting the GPU in made that neatly impossible. So Tristan, being the master of his art that he is, fast-tracked me another coupler and got it to me in like 3 days. Tristan, you're a master. The new coupler, what it does is it comes off the power supply and goes immediately to the left. If you're facing that way. If you're facing whatever. It goes that way, right away. So it comes out towards the back of the motherboard plate. That solved one problem, but I still didn't have enough length. So, Cooler Master, as you saw, makes that tiny little part, and it gave me just the right amount of length to go down to behind the motherboard plate, connect it to the coupler, and as you can see, it still looks really, really good. Putting the panel on was a little tight, but I knew that was going to happen in the first place. And it looks super cool now. Another thing that I did was something that I came up with. I deleted most of the cable combs and solved that problem with some Gorilla double stick tape. This is something I am going to do with all my builds from now on, because I even did it with a GPU. I have the one cable comb here, but you can see that the rest of it, there's no cable comb to direct it where it was. The double stick tape holds like a champ, and it goes all the way down here below the power supply shroud that I made, and it just really, really works. And I did the same thing with the CPU cable, which has no combs, and I did the same thing with the motherboard cable, which only has a couple of combs just to direct things. But other than that, there's nothing going on there, and it works really, really well. What I also did with the Gorilla Tape was I put it on the back of the motherboard plate to direct the cables that come off the front panel. So you've got your external SATA drive cable, you've got your USB cables, and you've got your power switch and reset switch cables going down behind the motherboard plate, and they just stick to the motherboard plate. So it looks really, really cool, very clean. There's no zip ties or anything like that. It's great. The result of which is just a really, really clean looking PC despite the lack of space. And I am incredibly pleased with this. It's going to be kind of sad letting this go. When he gets it and you're about to see him open it, I think he's going to be floored because he hasn't seen this yet. I mean, he's seen the videos and stuff, but I have not sent him any clear pictures of what's going on. I sent him a blurry picture of the PC powered up at night, but that's all he's gotten. He does not know what's coming, and he's going to be supremely pleased. Yeah, this thing just looks freaking amazing. The RX 580 fits really nice and snugly in here. Even with the cables coming just against the panel, it kind of really does a good job of keeping it in place. I had thought of taking some plexiglass and making like a stand, but I really don't think it's going to need it. All the work that I did with moving the cables and stuff really does the job, and before it was sort of pulling it down, it's not anymore, and it just looks great. The last thing I want to show you is right here is a heat sink, an RGB heat sink for the SSD. It's made by Johnsbo. It's a Chinese company. They make a lot of, cheaper PC parts and stuff that you can put over other things. They make computer cases. They make RGB SSD heat sinks. They even make RAM heat sinks that are all RGB. And if you don't want to spend the money on getting, a name brand one like Corsair or, Trident or whatever, you can get these for pretty cheap. I got this one on Wish, and it is doing the job. SSD heat sinks are what they are. You're going to have your pick and choose of many of them. I prefer the Patriot Viper VPN 100 one because it's got a lot of surface area. But this one is pretty cool. It's keeping the SSD in a really good temperature base. And as you can see, it looks really cool. Once he opens it up, it's just going to be super sweet and entirely worth it. So as painful as it is to see this go, it is going to a good home, and he is going to be really happy with it. The benchmark tests that I did with the games that he plays, like Skyrim and PUBG and No Man's Sky, turned out to be pretty good. Even on high settings, this thing's pushing 60 frames a second. So very pleased with all that stuff, and I'm just really happy with the result. The case came out really nice. The denting and the aging that I did with the drill bit, scratching at the metal and things like that, even if it does start to decay and rust, it's gonna look even better. This project is done. Gonna get it in the box, gonna get it to its home.
Hey everyone, Hobbs asked me to do a little unboxing of the new tower that just got here today. Super excited, so without further ado, let's open this thing up. Alright, go ahead and get this thing opened up. Outstanding. Oh, I am already loving how this keyboard looks. That looks incredible. I got this when I first got the tower that he rebuilt, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, it served me well. It wasn't super expensive, and it really served me well. I am super happy with this. That looks absolutely amazing. Set that off to the side. Moment of truth. Holy cow. This is absolutely amazing. Gonna do a quick transition here while I get this thing out of the box. I am so pleased with how this thing turned out. Hobbs told me he had some big plans with it, and I think he really hit the nail on the head with this thing. This looks incredible. Words can't really describe it. I had a real attachment to this tower. I got the tower and all the parts that I showed you that were already in it when I was working for Best Buy before I joined the Army. And I really enjoyed how small and compact this tower was, and especially since I'm in the military, I'm going to be moving a lot. Didn't really want to have to drag around a big bulky tower, but I still wanted to have a great gaming experience, and I said, please keep the tower. So it looks incredible. Yeah, words cannot describe this. I'm super happy with this. Alright, so we finally got everything hooked up. Made a quick trip to the PX to buy a new monitor because mine were kind of old and outdated. And we're about to do first time power on. See how it goes. Oh, that's so rad. Oh, I am so happy with this. This looks insane. HMODS, you did an outstanding job on this. Super stoked. Keyboard looks amazing. Tower looks amazing. Oh, I am so ready to game out on this. Totally digging the background. I am keeping this 150%. Shout out to HMODS, shout out to HMODS. You did an outstanding job. I will be using this for a very long time. Outstanding.
Thanks for watching. This has been an amazing build, and I've got a whole bunch of other ones coming up. So make sure to leave your questions and comments below. If you want something done, I would love to build it for you. So, yeah. Bye.